And there's something else that almost no one admits. When you start earning well, the pressure increases. Your family begins to see you as the stable one. Your friends think you're comfortable. At work, they expect more from you. And you start to feel responsible for maintaining an image, the image of someone who made it, the image of someone who is doing better. And that creates a huge fear of showing vulnerability. You don't talk about your anxiety because it feels contradictory. You don't talk about your fear because it feels like an exaggeration. You keep everything inside. And the more you hold it in, the heavier it gets. You begin to realize that your salary didn't buy the peace it promised. It bought comfort, yes. It bought some conveniences, yes. But it didn't buy emotional security. And that creates a frustration that's hard to explain. Because since you were young, you heard that earning more would fix things. That money was the problem. That if you just increased your income, life would fall into place. And now you've increased it, and life is still messy on the inside. That creates a sense of being misled, as if you followed the right script and still didn't arrive at the peace you expected. And that frustration can lead to two dangerous paths. The first is trying to earn even more, believing the problem is just quantity. So you work more hours, take on more responsibilities, accept more pressure, sacrifice more time. And the second is mentally giving up, starting to spend carelessly, thinking that since it's never enough anyway, it doesn't matter. Both paths have something in common. They don't solve what's underneath, because what's underneath isn't the amount of your salary. It's the feeling of vulnerability. It's the absence of a foundation that allows you to make mistakes. Pause. Breathe. It's the lack of a system that works even when you're not having your best day. Maybe you've never stopped to structure your financial life in a way that takes the weight off your shoulders. Maybe everything still depends on your constant attention, your daily effort, your permanent vigilance. And living like that is like keeping multiple plates spinning at the same time, knowing that if you get distracted, one will fall. Money is supposed to simplify your life, but if it's increasing your tension, something is missing at the foundation. And it's not willpower. It's not heroic discipline. It's structure. It's organization designed to protect your mind before it protects your wallet. Because when your mind is exhausted, you make worse decisions. You accept expenses you shouldn't. You postpone important adjustments. You avoid looking at numbers that make you uncomfortable. And little by little, you create exactly the scenario you fear most. What you need to understand before any spreadsheet, before any strategy, is that feeling poor, even while earning well, is a sign, not of failure, but of misalignment. It's your body saying that the financial life you built still doesn't give you room for error. And without room for error, there is no peace. Maybe today you're living at a sophisticated limit. Not the limit of someone who has nothing, but the limit of someone who has something, yet not enough to feel secure. And that's the most dangerous point, because it looks like everything is fine, but inside you know it's not. And if you leave now, you'll keep thinking the problem is just earning more. But if you stay until the end, you'll start to see that maybe what's missing isn't extra money, but a deep change in how you organize, protect, and view what you already earn. There's a specific moment when this feeling starts to get stronger, and it almost always happens at night. When you lie down after a full day of work, decide to grab your phone just to relax, but end up opening your banking app almost without realizing it, as if you're looking for confirmation that everything is under control. And when you see the balance, you don't feel joy. You don't feel pride. You feel tension, as if that number is too fragile to support the entire life you've built around it. You start doing mental math, calculating how long you could survive if the money stopped coming in, trying to imagine how long it would take to rebuild everything if something went wrong. And the more you think about it, the more you realize your peace depends on things you don't control. Your job depends on decisions that aren't yours. The economy depends on factors you don't fully understand. Your health depends on unexpected events no one can predict. And that awareness that everything can change is what keeps your brain in constant alert. You're not living in desperation, but you're not living in peace either. You're living in vigilance. And when your brain enters that state of vigilance, it starts to see risk in everything. A small, unexpected expense becomes an alarm. A simple repair becomes a sign of threat. A comment about an economic crisis becomes a trigger. And this doesn't happen because you're weak or dramatic. It happens because now you have something to lose. Before, when you had almost nothing, risk was already your reality. Now you have a lifestyle, fixed commitments, people who depend on you, and the fear of falling down a level hurts more than the memory of when you were at the bottom. It's like climbing a few steps and realizing the ground is farther away. You look down and think the fall could hurt much more now, and this feeling starts to influence your decisions without you noticing. You agree to work beyond your limits because you're afraid of seeming replaceable. You avoid taking vacations because you feel you need to show constant productivity. You hold back personal dreams because you think you can't take risks. Little by little, your life becomes narrower, more controlled, more rigid, all in the name of maintaining a stability that never feels sufficient. The strangest part is that on the outside, your life may look organized. The bills are paid, your credit card isn't maxed out. You even manage to save something. But saving a little can be emotionally harder than saving nothing. Because when you don't save, you already know you're vulnerable. But when you save a little, you start fearing losing the little you managed to build. Every dollar saved becomes something that needs protection. And protecting requires mental energy. It requires attention. It requires worry. There's an invisible point where the reserve is still too small to bring security, but big enough to create fear of loss. And that's where many people freeze, because money stops being just a resource and becomes emotional responsibility. Maybe you've already noticed that. Even earning well, you never feel like you've arrived. It always feels like something is missing. A little more in the account, a little more stability, a little more guarantee. And that feeling of always being almost there, but never truly secure, drains your energy. You start to feel behind, even though you're better off than before. You start comparing yourself to coworkers who seem more at ease. You start thinking you should be further ahead, more structured, more prepared. And that silent comparison feeds the feeling of insufficiency. You work hard, deliver results, grow in your career, but internally feel like you're still chasing something you never catch. This constant chase creates a kind of exhaustion that isn't just physical. It's mental. It's waking up already thinking about obligations. It's feeling like you can't fully relax because there's always some financial responsibility hovering in the back of your mind. It's living as if you're always owing something, even when you're not. And when that state becomes the norm, you start making decisions not to grow, but to avoid losing. And living only to avoid losses is a silent form of emotional poverty, because you stop thinking about building something bigger and start focusing only on maintaining what you already have. And maintaining requires continuous effort. Maybe what's happening to you is this. Your financial life has evolved, but your mental structure is still based on the old fear of scarcity. Your brain still acts as if risk is imminent, as if any misstep could take everything away. And while that emotional foundation doesn't change, no increase in income will be enough to bring the peace you expect. Because peace doesn't come from the absolute amount you earn. It comes from the feeling that there is margin. Margin to make mistakes. Margin to rest. Margin to say no. Margin to get through unexpected events without panicking. And if today you earn well but don't feel that margin, it's natural to still feel poor. There's a deeper root to all this that almost no one faces directly, because it doesn't show up on your bank statement. It doesn't show up on your credit card bill. It doesn't show up in your spreadsheet. It shows up in how you learned to see money from a very young age, and how you grew up hearing that security means never lacking anything, that stability means never taking risks, that success means never going backward. And when you internalize that, any possibility of loss becomes a huge threat to your identity. You're not just afraid of losing money. You're afraid of losing the image of someone who's making it, who overcame hardship, who won. And that weighs much more than any bill. Because now money isn't just a resource. It's a symbol of progress, a symbol of personal value, a symbol of competence. If something goes wrong, you don't just feel financial impact. You feel impact on your pride, your self-esteem, your story. Maybe that's why you work so much, even when you could slow down a little. Maybe that's why you accept extra responsibilities without questioning them. Maybe that's why you struggle to say no to expenses that raise your standard of living. Because cutting back would feel like going backward. And no one wants to feel like they're going backward. The problem is that by trying to sustain this image of permanent stability, you create a life with no room for failure. And living without room for failure means living under constant pressure. You begin to realize that everything in your routine depends on your performance. If you perform well, everything keeps working. If you fail, the whole structure shakes. And that creates a silent fear of stopping, of resting, of trying something new. At the same time, you start to notice that earning well brought invisible responsibilities. People ask for help more often. Invitations involve bigger expenses. The environment you move in demands a certain standard, and you adapt without realizing that each adaptation increases the fixed cost of your life, not just the financial cost, but the emotional cost. Because now there's expectation, and expectation is weight. You feel like you can't live like before, but you also don't feel comfortable enough to live without fear. You're stuck between two worlds. It's no longer the past, but it's not the peace you imagined reaching either. And here's the truth almost no one talks about. Increasing income without building a foundation is like increasing the size of a house without strengthening the foundation. On the outside, it looks bigger, better, more comfortable, but inside it is still fragile. If something shakes, everything feels unstable. And maybe you never stopped to build that foundation because you believed it would come automatically with time, with growth, with a higher salary. But a foundation doesn't appear on its own. It needs to be created intentionally. And while it doesn't exist, you'll continue feeling like you're always one step away from losing everything. That feeling of always being behind is born there too, because you compare your current income to what you used to make and see progress, but you compare your emotional security to what you imagined you'd have at this stage of life and feel frustration. You thought that earning what you earn today would mean being calm. You thought you'd have clarity, lightness, confidence, and instead you gained responsibility, fear, and internal pressure. That creates a silent disappointment. And because no one talks about it, you think you're the only one who feels this way. You look at coworkers who also earn well and imagine they sleep peacefully, but most of them are living the exact same conflict, just in silence. The central point is that you may be trying to solve insecurity with income, when what solves insecurity is structure. Structure that works even when you're not having your best month. Structure that doesn't depend on emotional decisions every day. Structure that creates distance between what you earn and what you commit to, because as long as every dollar that comes in already has a destination, you'll never feel freedom. You'll feel only maintenance. And living just to maintain is exhausting. Maybe you were never taught to treat money as something that protects your mind before protecting your lifestyle. Because if your income only serves to sustain increasingly bigger commitments, it's not working for you. You're working for it. And that inversion is what makes someone earn well and still feel poor. Poor in margin, poor in peace, poor in mental rest. You may have comfort, but you don't have breathing room. And breathing room is what allows you to breathe. What starts to change the game isn't an immediate income increase, nor a radical cut of everything, but a shift in how you see the role of money in your life. It shouldn't just be a way to climb the social ladder. It should be an emotional shock absorber, a layer of protection between you and life's normal chaos. And while it's only sustaining a standard, it will continue to be a source of pressure. When it starts creating margin, it begins to bring clarity. And clarity reduces fear. Maybe the biggest mistake keeping you in this place isn't spending too much or earning too little. Maybe it's living without realizing that your financial life today is completely dependent on your constant effort, as if you're the only gear keeping everything running. And while you don't stop, everything spins. But the simple idea of slowing down already feels too dangerous. That creates an invisible prison. You're not broke. You're not in debt. You're not at rock bottom. But you're not free either. You're conditioned to keep producing, delivering, solving, sustaining, and that makes you confuse stability with exhaustion. Maybe you've never structured your life to function without your daily vigilance. Every expense depends on your conscious decision. Every financial choice depends on your willpower. Every month starts with you thinking, this time I'm going to organize better. But organizing based on intention is tiring because intention depends on energy. And energy fluctuates. Some months you're more focused, some months you're more tired, some months an emotional surprise shows up and you simply don't have the headspace to manage every detail. And when the system depends on your mood, it's never stable. That's why earning well doesn't fix the feeling of poverty, because emotional poverty isn't lack of income, it's lack of predictability. When you don't know exactly what truly remains, when you don't know exactly how protected you are, when you have to think too much before any simple decision, that creates constant mental noise. And mental noise steals peace. Asterisk, maybe you're living a pattern where almost everything that comes in goes right back out. Not because you he irresponsible, but because your life expanded along with your income. A better place to live, a more comfortable car, a standard of consumption aligned with your new phase. And that's natural. The problem isn't improving your life. The problem is improving your life without creating distance between what you earn and what you need to live. When that distance doesn't exist, any variation becomes a threat. Asterisk, asterisk. Imagine your income as a straight line and your costs as another line almost glued to it. As long as the two move together, you never feel breathing room. There may even be some money left over, but it's small, fragile, insufficient to change your emotional state. And when there is little left, your brain stays on alert. It doesn't relax. It understands that you're still vulnerable. And while your brain understands there's vulnerability, it doesn't switch into rational mode. It stays in defense mode. Asterisk, 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 and in defense mode, you make decisions out of fear. You accept projects you didn't want. You tolerate situations that drain you. You avoid important conversations, not because you're weak, but because you feel like you can't take risks. And that creates a life that feels tight on the inside, even if it looks comfortable on the outside. Money, which should expand your choices, ends up limiting them because you depend on it coming in at the same pace every month. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Now think with me. What if the problem isn't how much you earn, but the fact that your structure doesn't allow you to make mistakes? If you went 3 months without income, what would happen? If you wanted to change jobs, would you have time to look calmly? If you wanted to take a month to reorganize your mind, would that be possible? If the answer to all of that is no, then it makes sense that you feel poor, even while earning well, because real wealth begins when you have time and margin, not just income. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, what starts to change this feeling is something simple to understand but hard to practice. Creating a system that works without depending on your heroic effort. A system where part of what you earn automatically leaves your sight before you even consider spending it. Not as sacrifice, but as protection. Not as obligation, but as building a foundation. Because when you don't see it, you don't suffer. When it becomes automatic, you don't negotiate with yourself every month. You don't depend on daily motivation. Asterisk, asterisk, this is different from cutting everything and living in extreme restriction. It's not about becoming rigid or obsessed with control. It's about creating an invisible layer of security that grows even when you're tired. Because the biggest mistake is believing you'll always be willing, focused, and disciplined. Life doesn't work that way. There are hard phases. There are moments of weakness. There are days when you just want to shut your mind off. And if your financial system depends on your maximum energy all the time, it will fail precisely when you need it most. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Maybe the feeling of poverty you carry today is actually the feeling that everything still depends too much on you. And while everything depends too much on you, you'll never fully relax. You'll always feel like you need to stay alert, and constant alertness is exhausting. Asterisk, asterisk. Now, an important question starts to arise that maybe you've never asked yourself honestly. Is your current income serving to sustain your image or to build your freedom? Because those are two different things. Sustaining an image requires constant spending. Building freedom requires constant margin. And margin doesn't appear on its own. It needs to be created intentionally, even if it hurts a little at first. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. And when you face that question, honestly, without trying to justify yourself, without trying to fool yourself, you start noticing small things that used to go unnoticed. You start realizing that many of your financial decisions didn't come from real necessity, but from automatic adaptation to your new income level. You didn't sit down one day and consciously decide you wanted a more expensive life. It simply became more expensive as you became able to pay for it. And that's subtle. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small adjustments. A better service here, a little more comfort there, a choice that seems small but becomes fixed. And when you add it all up, you realize you created a structure that demands a lot from you just to keep existing. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. Maybe what's missing isn't earning more, but reducing dependence. Dependence on the next paycheck. Dependence on your perfect performance. Dependence on nothing going wrong. Because as long as your life is built on the obligation that everything must continue exactly as it is, you'll keep living in a state of alert. Asterisk, 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 and creating freedom isn't destroying what you built. It's not going backward. It's not giving everything up. It's reorganizing priorities. It's starting to see every income increase as an opportunity to expand margin, not lifestyle. is starting to see every new fixed expense as something that needs to be thought through very carefully. Because a fixed expense isn't just money going out, it's permanent responsibility coming in. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. There's a very specific moment when the shift begins to happen. It's when you realize you can live well on less than you earn. Not less in the sense of suffering, but less in the sense of conscious limits. When you define a sustainable standard of living and decide that anything above that will serve to build protection, not inflate image. That moment changes the game. Because there you stop chasing your own salary and start making your salary work for you. Asterisk, 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 and when that distance starts to appear, even if it's small at first, your internal feeling changes. You begin to realize you're no longer completely exposed, that if something goes wrong, you don't immediately collapse, that if you want to say no to something that drains you, you can think more calmly, that if you need to breathe, there's space. That's the real change. It's not the number in the account. It's the change in how you sleep. It's the reduction of that automatic impulse to open the banking app every night. It's the mental silence that starts to appear when you understand you're no longer living at the sophisticated limit. Asterisk, asterisk. And maybe you're realizing now that it was never a lack of competence. It was never a lack of effort. It was never a lack of ambition. It was a lack of structure. It was a lack of margin. It was a lack of real protection between you and the unexpected. Asterisk, asterisk, earning well is not a guarantee of peace. But earning well and organizing your life to depend less on that constant income is what turns income into security. And security is what calms the mind. It's what reduces the feeling of being behind. It's what reduces guilt. It's what weakens the fear of the future. You don't need to double your salary to feel less poor. You need to stop building a life that consumes everything you produce. You need to stop treating every raise as permission to expand fixed costs. You need to understand that financial freedom begins when you create space between what you earn and what you need to live. And when you create that space, something very important happens. You stop living just to keep the machine running. You start living with choice. And choice is the opposite of emotional poverty. If you recognize yourself in every part of this conversation, if you realize the problem was never just how much comes in, but how much truly remains, leave a like so more people living at this sophisticated limit can hear this too. Subscribe to the channel because here we talk about money the way it really affects your mind, your decisions, and your peace. And if you made it this far, comment the word freedom so I know you don't want to keep earning well and still feel trapped.